contacts on this morning, and I don't have PowerPoint, but as I was thinking about it, it probably might be just a distraction anyway, because I really want you to kind of think about life and how the part we're going into today is a lot of rubber meets the road kind of study. And we're just going to deal with introduction today, but we're going to study the idea of humanity, studying man. As we've been studying God and looking at Him, and now we want to shift over and we want to look at man and just how we're described. But this morning I want to take a little bit of time that we started last time talking about the way that man is viewed and what is we talked about the idea of worldview, and everybody, the first thing you might think of is, why do I care? I mean, it's round, so what? That's all I need to know. I saw the little picture from space, and it's a little blue marble, and it's pretty, and that's all the worldview I need. But what I'm talking about is the way that we look at life, what's important, what is our priorities, how do we decide what our priorities are, what is the goal for living, and is there a goal beyond this life as you go on, or is this all there is? And so those kinds of issues are ones that will come down and help you or hurt you when you make everyday decisions, from what you're going to do tomorrow to next year to 5 years from now to further out. So I just want to kind of go over and review some of the ways that people, all of us out there, in a sense, look at man and what kind of a being he is as they wrestle with it. How many of you, when you went through school, either at high school level sometimes, but often at college level, there are courses that you have to take, and you go, why do I have to take that stupid class? Amen. Daphne's grinning over there because she's dealing with it. You have to take sociology, you have to take a psychology, you have to take all this stuff in college, and you go, I'm an agriculture student, what do I need that garbage for? And they say, oh, that's to help you be a balanced person and to know why you're here and where you're going. And said, I took those classes and I had no clue what they were talking about. How are they going to help me know where I'm going? However, but the whole idea, those classes fall within a category that has a title. And they're called the humanities, aren't they? And there's some other things grouped in there with them, but the idea is they're all about us as people, they're about us as groups of people, that's sociology, how we interact with one another and all this stuff. And you're supposed to understand that so you can be a more productive citizen out there farming on the hill where there's no people. Go figure. Well, anyway, there's a number of ways that people look at man and what he is and what's important. And the last time we mentioned that the first one I wanted to just kind of review over is that man is sort of kind of like a machine. And by a machine, what it is, a machine is something that you use to get work done, to get something accomplished, to do something. So if you look at the human being as a machine, then what is important about a machine? The work, what it gets done. So therefore, the highest need thing for man, or the highest goal, and if you look at us that way, is it's what I can produce and get done. And that's not all bad, and you can see some value in that. It's important to be productive, to be useful, but is that the only thing? Is that all it is? It's just how much work you can do. And so that's often was how employees were looked at, especially in the Industrial Revolution. You look at employees, they were just cogs in the machine to do more production for years and years and years. Now we look at it somewhat differently. You look at employees, you look at people, you now have human resources people. And yes, they look at what you can produce, but they also look at relationships and how do we relate to the people in our workforce and how are we part of a team and all that sort of thing. So it's a little different view. So that's one way to look at it. We're just a machine. The highest value is what you can produce. If you can't produce, then what? You might as well be dead. And you wonder, there's that idea in certain circles that's floating out there, isn't it? Why do we put people in nursing homes? Why do we care for people when they get older? Because once you're no longer productive, able to do work, or if you're handicapped, or if you have some, why do you need us? You're just pulling resources away from those who are the good working machines. So you can see how that kind of a viewpoint can affect how you look at people and what's important, and can affect what you think is the right thing to do or not. Yeah, it's just a practical decision. Just deal with it. So, that's one. The other one is, and you've heard this floating around out there are all of these creatures out there in the globe, all over the place, and man is one of them. We are an animal, and there's some truth in that, is there not? I mean, we share a lot of things that all of the other animals out there have. They have eyes and ears and senses, and, they have some things we don't have. Some of the predators run faster than we do, so that makes us a prey species. But if we're faster than they are, then we're the predator. But we're just an animal, and so that's as far as it goes. The main thing is just to do what you do and fit in somehow to all the other ecology. How does that make a difference in the way you look at man and his importance? You're just another one. But are you endangered? Well, I don't know. Are you more endangered than the other species that's on the endangered species list? And if that endangered species is more endangered, and therefore, because that animal now has the status, it says that's more important to have than you.
That's with babies, we see that all the time. Babies are not protected in the womb.
Yep.
It's
there's nothing special. It's just another animal. It's just another creature. So it doesn't matter. So you can see how if you take this view that that's all there is, if you're just another animal, then you compete with all the other animals out there, and you're no more important or no less important than any of the others. And that's floating around. There's bits and pieces of that element out there. So that's one. There's another one, and I almost even don't know how to quite go there, but it came out of a great psychologist. If you go, you're going to study Sigmund Freud somewhere, you'll hear that name pop up. And Sigmund Freud said that man is made out of 3 parts. There's one part called the id, and the id is this basic thing, and all it's interested in is the sex drive. That's it. And that part is suppressed by, there's the ego and the superego, and those two work in their various ways to kind of keep this beast throttled back down there, and to some degree or other. And it's all this battle between those 3 parts is what makes people as weird as they are. Or not. And that's, in a nutshell, that's Sigmund Freud's idea. But what he said is the basic thing is the sexual drive of human beings is the thing that drives everybody, and that's what matters. And you look at our world today, and you look at what's on the movies and the television and the advertising, and everything has sexual overtones. You almost can't sell a toothbrush without finding a way to make it a sexy toothbrush, right? I mean, it's just crazy the way things have gone. And you could look at that and say, somebody believes Freud, even though at the time he wrote all this stuff, it was kind of, But now people are saying, hey, that's the most important thing. That's what's it all about. That's what drives life. That's the decisions you make. Well, is it or is it not? It's part of life. It's God-created part of life. But is that the ultimate, the utmost? Is that the only thing that matters and the thing that ought to take precedence over everything else? So you can see again, here's how things like that can do it. Well, if that isn't it, maybe it's economics. Kind of a little bit related to work, but maybe it's economics, and the most important thing is balancing out so everybody has what they need. And there is a theory out there, you've probably heard of it, and the idea is that way back when we started out, it was kind of a slavery sort of a thing, and there was this small group of people had all the resources, all the economics, and there were those poor folks down there who were just slaves. They had zero. And then that slowly got adjusted up, and it went into kind of like feudalism. Remember in your study of ancient Europe or way back in the days, now you had serfs. They weren't slaves. They were like, well, right, we're that way, right? Leroy, tenant farmers. Yeah, you rent from the guy who owns the land. And so you're kind of the tenant. And you're a little better than the slave. At least you kind of had some autonomy, but somebody else still holds the cards. And then it went from there, it went up to capitalism, and now in capitalism you still have the big guys, but you now can work for a living, you now can own a little bit of something. See, we're coming together. You haven't heard any of this on TV lately, have you? And see, the next stage is to take what these guys have here, and you bring that down, and you slide it across here, and you spread it out so everybody has an equal piece of the pie. Well, no, the big guys don't like that. But the theory is that economics are what's most important. And what man needs is economic equality. And if everybody has the right amount of stuff, then all the disputes go away because it's a class thing. And so you get rid of the classes, you even anybody heard this?
Redistribution.
Yeah. Communism, that's what the whole idea was.
Only it didn't work.
It didn't work very well because as soon as you tried to equalize things out, all of a sudden, I think George Orwell said it in Animal Farm, he said all the animals are equal on the farm. Anybody read that book? That's an interesting guy. All the animals on the animal farm were equal, except some were more equal than others. Remember that? So that's the idea of economics, and the whole idea of communism. You would reach utopia when everybody shared the same thing. And is that right? Is that true?
We're trying it.
We're trying it. I mean, you see those elements, you can see that out there. And this is what drives it, is the idea that that will make us, that's happiness, that's going to work.
Theoretically, it's a great idea, except kills the motivation of the lessers and the others who are always grasping.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? That's what happened. My sister was part of a co-op, that did, there's a whole bunch of folks went together and they did tree planting. And it was a great idea. We all get together, we share all our resources, and we all work at this thing, and when we're done, we take the money we make and we divide it among everybody. And guess what happened? She and 2 or 3 others went out and slaved every day, and the other few guys always had an excuse to go back to camp and hang around, and they all got paid the same. So, funny, human nature being what it is. But that's one of the ideas out there that we face every day, and it affects how you look at life. If you think that that's an important thing, then you're going to make sure that your minimum wage is the same as that guy as CEO over there, because that's what will make everybody happy, and that's the ultimate goal, is to be happy and have a society that's happy. So that's one. There's another one, and this is kind of the defeatist one. I don't know if this is Eeyore or whatever it is, and that is the idea that you are just a pawn of the universe. Do you know anybody that feels that way? It doesn't matter what you do, doesn't matter what you think, whatever it is. The farmers tend to lean that way a little bit. Doesn't matter what I do, it's going to rain on my hay, it's going to be too hot on my wheat, and I can't do anything about it. It's just whatever's going to, if I did everything perfectly and got it, there would be an asteroid come through and land right in the middle of my farm, and then nothing you can do about it.
Is that called fatalism?
Fatalism, yeah. It's just, and there's some folks that live and believe that.
Nothing ever turns out right for me. I've heard.
Yeah, it's just everybody else is fine, but not for me. It just doesn't work. There are people that maybe that isn't their total operating thing, but you have read about them in the news because they tried several of the first things we've been through already, and maybe some of the ones that we haven't covered yet, and they found out each one of those came up empty, and they kind of ended up here. And you read about them when you found out they took their life. because it doesn't matter what you do. I mean, that's kind of where you can end up. It's kind of scary, actually. There's no purpose, there's no hope, there's no nothing. It's just we're in this universe and, we're just here. Why would we try so hard to find somebody else out there on the planet somewhere? Because maybe, possibly, we're not the pawns we thought. Maybe there's someone else. Maybe not. Here's one that will hit close to home if you call yourself conservative at all. The idea of a free being. Freedom is everything. This hits really close to home in the United States of America. The idea that if you have liberty, if you have the ability to make free choices, that will be the ultimate in happiness. The idea of our country's foundation is that we declare these rights to be self-evident, and you should have all this opportunity to pursue happiness and everything. Maximum amount of freedom, and government and all these other things ought to be minimized. If you listen to any of the conservative talk radio stuff, this is what you will hear. And there's a lot of that you can go, hey, no, just let me do my thing. Have minimal amount of government to promote freedom and cut the meddling. Just leave me alone, let me make my choices and do what I want to do and live the way I want to live. And life would be good. We will all be happy, prosperous. Everything's going to be wonderful. Has some elements of truth in it. I mean, that's what our country was actually is the reason we're here and doing as well as we are as a nation is based on people that believe that. But is that the only thing that should drive us?
Most all of these have an element of truth, but you get out of balance.
Out of balance, yeah. It's that element, and the thing that I'm trying to get you to think about as we go through these, not that you go, oh no, the whole world's terrible, but to realize there are elements of truth in every single one of these. And what the enemy will do is take an element of truth or two and bring them in and mix them all up with stuff that isn't. And next thing you know, you've swallowed the whole bait. So you need to carefully think about things. There's one other one out there, and some places you find it more than others, and in some societies more than others, and that's the idea that man is a social being, and your value is going to be found and defined by your being part of a social group. If you are in the Philippines today, that is much more prevalent than the free being idea. And whenever we go over there, it's a real challenge to us because we're thinking the individual, the freedom, the ability to do what you want to do, and they're thinking the group. You are only somebody if you're a part of a group, a family, a something. Probably the Spanish culture probably is much more like that. That your value is determined by being part of a group, and if you're not in the group, you are really lost out there.
I think that's some of the problems we have in the Middle East today, is it's clans of different groups within groups that are always that way.
And then we don't agree as a group. Yeah, which group is the right one? So that has its problems. But you can see that's out there, and there are some people that struggle with the idea that I'm not part of a group, I'm not part of this social thing, and you have to be. All my friends tell me, you have to be in this group, and if you're not, and if you don't, what do you have to do to be in the group? You have to conform, you have to fit in, you have to prove your value to the group. Then who's dictating and driving and telling you what happens?
You see that all the time in the gangs. Murder,
Sure.
or even in alcohol.
That's part of that idea of what's important in life is being a member of that gang. And if you're outside of it, you're outside. You're alone and you're at risk in your nature. And there's some truth in that. I mean, that's why even as a church, there's truth in the fact that we're part of this group and it's important to be part of that. And yet, is that the highest thing? Is that the most important thing? So, what is it really? So what we want to get into, and we'll just introduce it a little bit here today, is the idea, is there a Christian view of humanity? Is there something that we can find within this book that will help us decide and sift and sort through all that stuff out there and help us be able to find something we can hang on to? Here, you don't have to worry about trying to keep all this straight, because we're going to go through it in pieces, more detail down the road here. But the first thing that's going to start out is that human beings are a creature of God, a creation of Him. So that is your first point, I guess, that you start from, is saying, okay, the reason we're here, when you get done taking all those required classes at the university, is because God made us and put us here, and we are made, as Genesis tells us, we are made in the image of God. It's not just chance. You're not a pawn of the universe that happened to have a lightning strike in a puddle of green goo somewhere, and suddenly the impossible happened, and life began, and you came out of that. God said, let there be life, and it happened. It was conscious and purposeful act of God that you're here. That He thought about it, and He made a purpose for you to be here. And the reason for human existence lies in the intentions of the Supreme Being. It's Him that determines why we have purpose and a point. The second part of that, very closely related, the image of God is intrinsic and indispensable to humanity. The fact that you are made in the image of God is really, really important, because that's the basis from which you work. That's what sets us apart from the rest of the animal kingdom. Why are we not all just animals? We share hearts and lungs and eyes and brains, and some of us probably have more or less than some of the animals out there. Maybe, I don't know, we could argue that point. But we have all those elements that are similar to them, but what they don't have, that we do have, as revealed in God's Word, is the image of God. What that does for us that they don't have, and if you love your doggy, like I love mine, my doggy does not have the ability to have a relationship with his Creator. It's not going to be able to do that. We can sit there and give the gospel to our pets all day long, and it will mean nothing to them. They do not have within them the ability to understand their Creator. They just are. And they love, and they're just happy being there, which is wonderful, because they put up with us. We're the only ones that have the ability to respond to Him, to have a relationship with Him. We can know God and understand His desires for us. We can love Him. We can worship Him. We can choose to obey Him. All those things come out of the fact that He made us with that connection with Him. And we have that possibility. I wrote down a quote here that I wanted to read to you that says, "We cannot discover our real meaning by regarding ourselves and our own happiness as the highest of all values." Did you get that? We will not find a real meaning out of life by saying, my happiness is the greatest thing, I'm going to pursue that. If we put that as our highest value, pursue it. Nor will we find happiness, fulfillment, or satisfaction by pursuing it directly. If you don't believe me, go look at the in memoriam from the last few years of individuals who had it made and said, life is not worth living. I'm done. People who would have everything that our society today says will bring you happiness, will bring you fulfillment, and will bring you satisfaction. They had beautiful husbands and wives. They had money. They had success in the workplace with what they were doing. They were the beautiful people. They were part of the social group that was the in group, if anybody was in group. They had everything this world says is important, and they took their lives. Why would you do that? Because you cannot find happiness, fulfillment, or satisfaction by pursuing it directly. If you're... Solomon tried that. And interesting you should say that, because I just happen to have Ecclesiastes chapter 2 open up here in front of me. Thank you for that. We're just coming down to the end here. Listen to Solomon's words in chapter 2. It says, I said to myself, come now, I will test you with pleasure. So enjoy yourself. And behold, it too was futility. I said of laughter, it's madness. And of pleasure, what does it accomplish? I explored with my mind how to stimulate my body with wine, while my mind was guiding me wisely, and how to take hold of folly, until I could see what good there is for the sons of men to do under the heaven the few years of their lives. There's our little pawn in these few years of our lives. I enlarged my works. I built houses for myself. I planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself, and I planted them all kinds of fruit trees. I made ponds of water for myself, from which to irrigate a forest of growing trees. He was a farmer. What more could you ask for? I bought male and female slaves, and I had homeborn slaves. I also possessed flocks and herds larger than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. Also I collected for myself silver and gold, the treasures of kings and provinces, artwork. I provided for myself male and female singers and the pleasures of men, many concubines. Then I became great and increased more than all who preceded me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also stood by me. All that my eyes desired, I did not refuse them. I did not withhold my heart from any pleasure, for my heart was pleased for all my labor, and this was my reward for all my labor. Thus I considered all my activities, which my hands had done, and all the labor which I had exerted, and behold, it was wonderful. Oh, no. All was vanity and striving after wind, and there was no profit under the sun. How depressing. I tried it all. I did it all. Everything that we went down through, all those world views, she tried to find his happiness in them, and his zip. He said it's just wind. It's nothing. So our value is conferred by a higher source. And we're short on time, so I'll just give you the references and see if you remember them. One is Mark chapter 8, verse 35. And he says, if you seek your life, those who seek their lives will lose their lives. But those who will lose their lives for the sake of the gospel will find them.
Here's a verse that stuck with me when I went to Bible through and I tried to, and I told my wife to put this on my tombstone.
Okay, this is one for your tombstone.
Yeah, Micah 6:8.
Micah 6:8. Go ahead.
He has shown you, O man, what is good, and what does the Lord require of you? To act justly, and love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God.
Boy. And he just put that so concisely. Yep. Micah 6:8.
At a verse at the end of chapter 2 of Ecclesiastes, I think it's 28, it says, for without him, who can eat or find enjoyment?
Yeah, without God, there is no enjoyment. You can't find it. That was verse 28 of Ecclesiastes 2. It says, without him, there's just nothing. When he gets all down to the bottom, he says, without God, it's nothing. It's no good.
We live in a world that says it's all about me.
Yeah,
It needs to be all
all about him. And yet, interestingly, as we close here, how God looks at you. Where does your value come from? And I'm going to challenge you to, as we go through this, to look and see that our value comes from him. and some hints at it that I'm going to leave with you. Matthew 10:28. It says in Matthew 10:28, among other things in there, every hair on your head is numbered. He knows you so well that every follicle, even ones that used to have hair, is numbered. You are that important to him that those things that we say are trivial are unimportant. He keeps track of. Therefore, the argument is, and the logic is, that which is more important to us is even greater value to him. And Luke 15:3-7 is a story that talks about the Good Shepherd, who he leaves the whole flock there because he's missing one. He says, this is the way your God is. He knows there is one little lost lamb. Man would say, hey, I got 99.99% of the herd. Somewhere out there is one sickly little old lamb or something. It's not going to break me. Coyotes get it. Too much trouble, too much hassle for that one little. That's the image you got to get when you read that passage. We're talking about this little wimpy lost lamb. We're not talking about the prize sheep, the one that was the most valuable, made the purple ribbon at the fair last year and all that. We're talking about this little lamb, and the sheep herder with lots to manage is not going to risk that whole herd for that one little one. And it says our God goes to seek that one out because he finds value in it. So I hope that I'll be able to keep up with the study for one. Because it's a lot of stuff to try to get through, because I thought this was going to be easy because I have this book and it lays it all out for me. Oh boy, what a wrong idea that was. But these things are really important, and I hope you can see why. Because it's not just head stuff where we can say, oh, well, I know my God's like this, and I know, oh, yeah, man, the Bible says man is like this. But when you get to make a choice when the TV comes on and the advertising hits you or whatever it is, you can go, no, I'm not going there. That isn't going to buy me happiness. That's not the right choice for me. And when the group says, boy, that's the hard one. Doesn't matter whether you're a farmer or whatever. Andy says he had to go to a meeting he was asked to attend here this last week, and I think Leroy heard him tell the story. He pulled in, he drives that little red Honda, the little dinky car. This is a farm meeting. What do you think everybody else drove to the meeting? I said, he pulls up in there and he can look underneath the pickup sitting beside him. And he gets out, and you have to say, am I going to be pressured and swayed by everybody's big pickup, or do I drive what I drive because that's the right thing to do? And so that's kind of a goofy illustration, but every day in our lives we get faced with that kind of thing. What's the right decision? What is it that God wants us to be? Hopefully this will help us to be able to deal with those. Father, we thank you. This morning, Lord, we've had a kind of a wild and crazy discussion of the world we live in a little bit here, and maybe less in the Scriptures, but Father, may it prep our minds and get us thinking about life and the choices that we make, sometimes without even really thinking about it. We've just kind of taken the easy track or the road that's there that everyone's following, and we haven't really stopped to evaluate and question why we've made the choices we've made, or gone the way we've gone, or just believe what we do about the things that happen around us. Help us, Father, as we go through this study to be more carefully considering the things that are out there. And help us to weed out those things that are true, the elements of our world that are true and that we can follow and use, but help us to be able to sort out the junk that gets thrown in there from these other perspectives, that we might find our happiness in pursuing you, that those things are what are added to when we pursue our God and His way for us. Help us to have confidence in you, Lord, that you really do love us, that you really did create us for a purpose, and that in fulfilling that purpose, and finding the place in this life that you want us, we can find our ultimate happiness and our ultimate joy and the meaning behind being here. Father, thank you for our time together this morning. In Jesus' name, who has made it possible.